The Apartment Gurus podcast is brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group, an apartment acquisitions and holdings firm co-founded by Carl York and Tate Siemer, host of this show. We offer you the opportunity to be an owner of cash-flowing, wealth-growing apartments without the headaches of being a landlord. These assets are recession-resistant, risk-mitigated, offer significant tax advantages, and are a great alternative to the stock market. Ready to check it out? Go to www.investwithgreenlight.com today to book a personal consultation with Carl or Tate. Again, that's investwithgreenlight.com. We look forward to meeting you. Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast. Glad that you joined us again today and really excited about today's episode. Going to make this a super valuable time for you guys to enjoy learning about multifamily real estate and how the donuts get made, right? Like that's not the sausage. I got it all wrong, man. I got the analogy wrong. A little weird. Yeah. But we've got my friend, Mr. JP Albano on the show. JP and I are both members of a capital raising mastermind, and that's how we connected. And JP was here in Salt Lake City, my hometown, in January for the Best Ever conference. And JP is in the multifamily space, has about 60 million under management. I'm going to let him tell you the name of his company because it's got a unique story behind it. But JP, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you and excited to talk about everything that we have to talk about here.
Yeah, Tate, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am excited to be here as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So significant lifestyle communities. So let's start right there. What tell us the story there, what significant lifestyle communities is. And for the listener, if you see it in the show notes, you'll see it's significant without the letter T at the end. So tell us all about that, JP.
This is the best segue I think I've ever had because you now let me tell the origin story, which explains the company. This is a quickish story.
Perfect.
I was in tech for a long time. I was an engineer and in tech sales for a long time. At some point, and I'm shortening this story, I decided I wanted passive income. So I found real estate. I found apartments. Apartments made a bunch of sense. I decided to get into that. I ended up meeting a business partner. His name is Matt. And we decided let's partner together and buy apartments. So we found a couple of deals together, about a couple hundred units. And then actually I was in Sundance, Utah at a Mother Mastermind event in 2019. I went there. It was a Brendan Burchard mastermind event. Yep. Burchard's an awesome guy. So I went there. It was a 3-day event. There was about, 300 people or so. And the first night you get there, there's a big mess hall where there's people congregating and talking and networking. And I didn't know where to go. I felt like I was in, middle school all over again, having a lunch tray. And I was like confused. And then all the way in the back of the room, there's this old guy sitting by himself. And I thought to myself, let me go sit next to the old guy. Maybe I'll go learn something. So I walk over, I introduce myself. Hi, I'm JP. Hi, I'm Howard. We shook hands. Nice to meet you. Exchanged some pleasantries. And I ended up learning a lot about this gentleman. I learned that number one, he was a very successful serial entrepreneur. I learned that he lived in the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle area back in the late 90s or so. Mm-hmm. Was well connected in that startup space, back then. Yeah. And he actually told me a story of how when Howard Schultz of Starbucks fame was raising capital for Starbucks, how he was running into some challenges, and the advice that this Howard gave to that Howard was it was inspiration about culture, how important culture was in business. And it's, as you know about Starbucks, like culture is a big thing. So then the other piece too, I learned about my Howard, we'll call him, is he had a very interesting skill set around using language in business. And so he went on to tell me, as I spent 3 days with him, that he's like when he ran his properties, he was an operator for 20 years. When he ran his properties, he didn't call people renters. And the reason why he didn't do that is because he wanted to combat the stereotypical, he wanted to break down the stereotypical landlord tenant combative dynamic that happens. Like if you're the renter, like, look, man, what do you want from me? I just pay rent, leave me alone. And if you're the landlord, you sure don't really care who lives there as long as they're paying the rent, right? So he came up with this idea, like, what if I elevate these people to be more than a renter, more than a tenant, like to be a member of the community, almost like a country club. And so people didn't pay rent. They paid a membership fee. They signed a membership agreement, not a lease. They worked with a membership coordinator, not a leasing agent. And there wasn't a property manager. There was a community mayor. The main job of the mayor, of course, obviously was to run the property, but also really to kind of give love to the members of the community there. And then he told me a story how one of the last decisions a prospective member would make before moving in was this idea of picking the paint color on the wall. Look, as an operator, I got to turn the unit. Like, why not let the person living inside the home there choose the color of the walls? Yeah. It's not my house, it's their house, right? Sure. And so what happens is, like, you probably know this, in housing, you don't have any freedom of choice. The freedom of choice you have is like how many bedrooms you want and when can you move in? That's kind of really it. So being able to give someone choice in a place like that was profound. And the reason why you do this is because you want to instill pride and ownership. Yeah. That's the key. That pride and ownership forces people, it allows people to care where they live, and they'll take better care of it as a consequence. And so, this is kind of paraphrasing what I learned over 3 days here, but it was an incredible opportunity. And from that, I was really inspired. I say, Howard, how the heck is I find the guy out of 350 people over the course of these 3 days? Like, you're literally the first person I walk up to. And as I've gotten older, I feel like I've gotten wiser, more spiritual, all the things. But I took a page out of the Alchemist book. The universe has kind of conspired to put us together. And so we ended up hiring Howard as a strategic advisor for us to build what would be this spiritual successor to what he did 20 years ago. And so when we got together, we spent a number of days at my house, my partner Matt and I and Howard, and we built out our core values and our business plan, and we really shifted our focus on how we were going to do multifamily. And so one of our core values, or number one, was significance. We wanted the people that live there to feel significance in our team and all this stuff. And so we were actually going to be called Significant Lifestyle Communities. And then if you look at how it's spelled, the word significant, it's sign if I can't. And my partner Matt was doing the logo, because when you're a startup, like, everyone's doing everything. He's like, hey, it says sign if I can't. This is not cool. So we ended up dropping the T, and it became significant. And now every time you see the word significant, you're going to think of my company. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Very cool. So you were advised by a guy that advised Howard Schultz on culture in one of the most successful corporate stories ever on the planet. I mean, that is insane, dude. That's amazing. And like you said, to have met him, and out of 350 people at an event in Utah, of all places, and then to hire him and have him help you build it. And that's just amazing. What an incredible story.
There were so many moments where we would have these sessions with Howard. He'd help us with kind of pre-shopping properties. And I would just have these extra out of body experiences where I would kind of sense myself in this room with this guy. And he's a wonderful human being, and just sort of really taking in the level of appreciation that I have to be in this situation where this gentleman is sharing his career wisdom with us. Yeah. I mean, he's paying him, of course, but he's so passionate about doing it, and he sees the passion in us. And so it's this way of passing the baton down to the next generation of things. And it was really, really special, really cool.
So that origin was 2019. And are you still working with him today?
So we're not officially affiliated with Howard anymore. We're still great friends. I still consider him a mentor and a friend of mine, but he's just a super dude.
Yeah. Got it. Awesome. Well, so tell us a little bit about the real estate path, the start from that first property, and what was that? Well, I guess first of all, 20 years in IT and in W2 to come out where you are now, dude, building a commercial real estate holdings firm and acquisitions firm and raising capital and doing what you're doing. Like that's a big transition, a big shift in life. What inspired that, I guess, first of all, and then take us through the story of how it all came to be.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So what inspired really the last straw moment, if you will, I was an engineer for many years, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning. And I transitioned into, that word transition has been hijacked today, but I transitioned into technology sales. I found it as an opportunity to make more money for doing the same work. And so that was great. And I did that for a couple of years, each year, making more and more sales and seeing more and more income coming in. It was wonderful. And, beautiful part about being in sales is your income potential is almost unlimited, right? The better you can be at sales, the more money you can make. Cool. Only problem is pay more in taxes. And, after seeing, year after year, and you get this pay stub, I was getting pay stubs at the time. And you look at it and you're like, oh, here's a check for, I was expecting a check for 70 grand. And then you see 40,000 and you're like, wow, I had a lot of money that went away in taxes. And then after doing that for a while, you're like, all right, something's got to give here. So that was like my thing. Like, all right, how do I stop paying so much in taxes? And, you learn about how ordinary income is taxed and at the most highest rate practically. And really, if you can earn money from capital gains, it's a better tax rate, right? So I went down this path of thinking I was going to be a day trader for a little bit, spent a bunch of money and time and lost a bunch of money on that. I learned how to read candlesticks, however. But what I realized in doing this process was like, really what I was looking for was passive income. I got a point in my life where I didn't want to keep selling hard drives to live the lifestyle I had. Like, how do I do both? Like still leave my lifestyle, but also not sell hard drives. And so I kind of went researching in real estate because it occurred to me real estate is a way of creating great passive income, right? And as you probably know, there's 1,000 different ways that you can make money or get started in real estate. You could do industrial, you can do mobile home parks, you could do wholesaling, fix and flip. It doesn't end. And so kind of struggling with that, and you find apartments. I remember reading David Lindahl's book, Emerging Markets. I read that cover to cover. Like that was like just vibrating, resonating truth when I read that book. And I knew from that point on, like apartments just make all the sense in the world, at least to me, right? For all the aspects, the inflation, the recession resistant stuff and diversification from having not one renter, but having like 200 or so, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. Apartments is my jam. I got to go learn how to do this business. And, that was the path I took. I got involved with an educational group platform to learn. I got some coaches, some mentors. Of course, years later, I met Howard along the way. But there was a lot of identity shift that had to happen. It's not easy going from sales guy to real estate investor. A lot of personal growth and limiting beliefs that I had to overcome. But you could do it. Anyone could do it. I've run into people that are like, hey man, I can't imagine like changing careers. Anyone could do it. It's work, right? That's just kind of really it.
I got to say, I used to 100% agree with you on that statement that anyone can do it. And we've been doing this podcast now almost 3 years and I've been coaching one-on-one clients now for about a year and have a mastermind and everything. And I'll say that for me, what I've noticed is that I think there are people that are more like beneficially wired for this sort of venture and this space, in particular, just business ownership, right? Like, just being a business owner versus being an employee. Those are two really different mentalities.
You're right.
And some people are just wired as employees and some are owners, and there's nothing right or wrong with either one of those, in my opinion. But I do think that certainly within my listening audience that you're speaking to right now, I would agree with that statement that everybody here listening, if you've been attracted to this podcast or directed to it in one way or another, you more than likely 99% have what it takes to do this business, in my opinion. Not to be contrarian with you, JP, but it's just an interesting observation that I've been making more recently. It's like, maybe this isn't for everybody. Because I mean, you know what it's like when you get under contract on a property and there's literally 80 things to do to get to closing. Like that's not for everybody. That's like, there's a lot of stuff there that needs to be taken care of. A lot of plates that you got to keep spinning.
Even describing it as a lot of stuff, it doesn't even do it justice.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Pressure there.
Yeah. I'm going to write a book one of these days soon called From Contract to Close.
Yeah.
And
document
just
all the things.
Document everything there is from the moment you sign that PSA after the LOI process and everything. Of course, that's a big process. And then the PSA negotiation and all that. But man, when the hammer drops on that PSA signature and all the dominoes start or either need to fall or start falling with the loan, with due diligence, with legal, with the entity formation, with capital raising, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's a lot of stuff, man. And I think you need help. You need help. Like, you had coaches and mentors, and you said an educational platform. Would you say that was like key in getting you off the ground?
Absolutely. I don't recommend this to anybody without a support group. I had coaches that help to not reinforce, but help inspire you to validate you're doing the right thing so you don't make stupid mistakes. I mean, you are going to make mistakes. That's the learning process, but minimize those so they're controllable and you can kind of, grow in a healthy way. There's no need to create extra stress when you don't need to, but having a community to lean on is absolutely critical.
So this was pre-2019. What year was this that you put all this together? And
this was, I think I spent 2017 and sort of like part of 2017 touch figuring out what I wanted to do, then kind of finding apartment real estate. I think it was then 2018 is when I got hooked up with Jake and Gino, Wheelbarrow Profits. And they kind of like launched there. I was part of the first group of students to come into their class there.
Nice.
That was 2018. Nice. And we did our first deal. I was a KP in a deal in 18. And then I did our first, we closed our first syndicated property in Houston, Texas in 19. So
and you're the lead sponsor on that one in Texas.
Yeah, me and three other guys, we came together. We were partners and we raised capital and we did our first, it was a 28 unit in Houston, Texas, raised money from strangers and some friends and family. And we exited that one, I think in 22, that one. But that was our first deal was a syndicated deal, which I don't recommend to everybody unless you got stomach for it, but you could do it. And it was fun. And it's just crazy looking back at how you evolve and grow over time. Like in the beginning, this idea of doing 200, 300 unit apartment complexes is so enormous. It's like so out there, like it blows your mind literally. And then, but you do a 28 unit. And then like now, this isn't me like bragging. Like there was a time I went after 1,061 unit apartment complex and like it was nothing. It was a big deal, obviously, but like, it wasn't that big of a deal versus where I was in the beginning where like, that would have just blown my mind. Right. Kind of cool to see that transition.
Yeah. I mean, whether you're doing 161 units or 1,061 units, look, this is something that seems kind of obvious, but I think it needs to be said and repeated. Like you are, again, 161 versus 1,061 or 16, right? Units. You're still getting one loan. You're dealing with one set of legal docs, one set of attorneys, and doing one transaction, right? And of course, you're raising capital. That's the biggest difference, of course, in scale is the amount of the loan and the amount of the equity needed to get the loan closed and get the transaction closed. And of course, that's just a matter of, just your capital raising machine and your resources and your quote unquote co-GPs or, people that you can bring into the deal as partners that will also, one of their duties would be to raise capital or bring capital to the deal. And then there's pref equity, there's institutional sources of equity. So there are ways of getting these big deals done. And, I'll say this too. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this one, JP, but, the hardest deal that we ever did, we just closed a few weeks ago, which was a $1.5 million purchase, like the smallest deal in the world. Actually, that's not true. Our little 12 unit that we did to start was smaller than that. but not much, right? And getting this daggone 52 unit heavy lift rehab and lot in Oklahoma to the finish line was a gargantuan task. And it was a $1.5 million deal. Like, so, and like both my partner and I lost sleep over, I mean, it was silly, like how much stress and angst this thing caused. So there's a lesson there too, I think, in that, there's an adage in our space that the bigger deals actually get easier to do. And I think that's simplified, but I think that there's truth in that statement, in at least in certain ways, right? And maybe in some nuanced ways but there, one of those ways, and then I'll let you comment, JP, because I'm curious what you have to say on this. But one of those ways is that institutional equity really doesn't have an interest in deals that they're writing checks less than usually $5 million on. So you get a deal, all of a sudden you need a $10 million equity check, or you have a $10 million equity need, and you're looking for either preferred equity or JV equity or institutional equity to come in and take a piece of that down. You're going to have a lot easier time finding somebody for that bigger property than you are for a small one. I know that personally, just painfully over the last year getting this one deal done. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Have you found that to be true as well? That the smaller ones are a little harder sometimes.
You speak the truth. Look, it's brain damage no matter what. Right?
Yeah. The
smaller deals, the reward for the brain damage, it's disproportional to the bigger deals for a couple of reasons. And this isn't poo-pooing on your deal at all. In my experience, smaller properties, they may or may not be easier to manage. They usually don't have, like, our sweet spot is 200-ish units and or so, especially with the way we manage our properties and all the things I mentioned earlier. But when you have a small property, like a 90 unit or a 50 unit, it's hard to have a team there. I mean, yes, you got a property manager, but like the more people you have, like if I got a property manager, one assistant, and then a supervisor for services, and maybe a tech, like someone can be out sick and like, it's not like a big deal. We had a property in Augusta, Georgia. It was a 96 unit. We had one property manager and like a part-time supervisor, maintenance guy. And that was like, there was a time where I had to go step in and be like temporary property manager because like, what do you do? So there's that part. And then of course, like, you're this close potentially to like break even point with your rent. So if you got a bigger property, right? Like the reward, there's that much more risk mitigation you've got, all of the things. And especially your point about raising capital, it is a lot. And that was the thing that I thought was so funny at the beginning, or interesting or curious. Like, wait a minute, it's easier to raise more money than less money. Like getting a check for $10 million or $5 million is easier than raising $1 million, $2 million. It's absolute truth. It's just because people like these institutionals, these equity groups, they have a mandate to invest money in deals. Yeah. Bring them the right deal that checks the right box. There's a high likelihood that they'll invest the money in that deal for you. Yeah. It's like a juice worth the squeeze. That's kind of really it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in this somewhat distressed economy that we're in, I guess, if you want to call it that, I guess there's no real argument there. We're in a somewhat distressed economy. In early August of 2023, when we're recording this, there's still a ton of capital out there that needs exactly what JP just said, which is there's a mandate for it to be deployed into something, right? So our job, in my opinion, as lead sponsors and deal makers, is to go out and create those opportunities for that capital, right? Like go out and unearth the deals or unearth an opportunity and make it into a deal, like through just great negotiation or a great business plan or creative financing or whatever it takes to get that thing to work. Go make it happen. That's what we do, right?
That is our value add in this ecosystem.
Well said. Well said. Dude, you are very articulate, JP. I just want to point that out. I'm sure for the listeners, it's very obvious, but you have a really descriptive way of kind of, I'm still thinking about that, the way that you described Howard's ethic around for lack of a better term, resident or a tenant being a member of a community, instead of a resident or a tenant. That's brilliant. It's really, really brilliant. To that point for a second, is that something that you have? Do you guys still call your residents members? And
yeah, we do. And I'll give you another little secret here. And it's amazing to me. So what we do really at the end of the day isn't that extraordinary from everybody else from operating properties, but there's something that gets lost in translation in the laundry, right? When our team, our membership house, the leasing agents, the property managers, when we're interacting with prospective members or renters, we'll just call them renters, with prospective renters that are coming in, the thing that we do differently from a lot of other groups is we really focus on customer service. I know it's thrown out ubiquitously, like everyone says customer service, but our team makes it a point to build a rapport with the people that move in. I do a lot of secret apartment shopping, and it's fun. Like, you can try this too. Do a secret apartment shopping, walk in. This is what happens. You walk in, you stand there awkwardly in the leasing office, waiting for someone, depending on, like, I do a lot of C-class stuff. So it's usually, there's a lot of attitude and interesting else. So you're hanging out, waiting for someone to acknowledge your existence. They look up to you and you can kind of feel the disgust, like, yes, how can I help you? That's not always the case, but that's usually the case. And then it goes like this. I'm looking for an apartment. Okay. How many bedrooms do you need? 2. And when can you move in? Next month. All right, great. Need your driver's license, and we'll go for a tour. And it's like this transaction. And I can tell you, I think I've been asked what my first name is in the first few minutes. Maybe I can count on one hand how many times. I do a lot of apartment shopping. Yeah. It's usually at the end, and they just like start spitting stats about the property, and they don't ask simple questions like, "Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do for fun? Do you have a family? Where do you work?" Like, build a rapport. So to contrast that in our property, we train our team, because we do in-house property management. Hey, when someone walks in to the office there, stand up from your desk, greet them. Hello, how are you? And build that rapport, and then build the rapport on the way as you're doing the property tour.
Sure. And
again, it's not rocket science. It's work. It's extra effort. But you kind of need to have that. And what I found, what was so interesting when we do our onboarding for our teams, and it was shocking for me, because as a guy that went from sales into apartments, like, the whole world of operations and like hearing feedback from the people that live there was something that I never even considered originally I was going to be a passive investor. As an active investor, like, hearing how this lands on people, your customers, has been awesome. Like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, how like transformational, like, people really appreciate living in your communities because they feel welcomed there. And then hearing from your team who operate and live in the multifamily space as professionals, as leasing agents and property managers, how I was saying, like, how many times I've been like reprimanded at my job for going above and beyond to do the right thing for a tenant, or they have these rules. So think of like Greystones of the world. They have rules, just like banks. You do this X, Y, Z, because you systematize it, you process it, and that's really it. And you kind of leave not a lot of room for interpretation. But the extent of the consequence of that is, like, you're creating this transactional society. And if there's anything that COVID has taught us, it's like, let's automate everything, right? And let's remove the human element. I don't know about you, but when I pick up the phone and call customer service, hate like when a robot comes on. I want to talk to someone. I don't know. Call me old fashioned. But
it's so rare these days that you actually do get somebody live first anyway. Like, you're always talking to a robot first these days.
Tell me your problem.
Yeah.
How do I describe this? My brain hurts just thinking about how I articulate my problem in a way that you're going to understand. Prompt.
Right. Totally. Well, I think it's amazing. And I'm just in general, I'm a big believer. The Gary Vaynerchuk, probably most listeners have heard of him. I love he's the only person I've really ever heard talk about this, but he talks about doubling down on self-esteem. And I just love that concept. If you are in the business of making other people feel good about themselves, man, you're going to be successful no matter what you're doing. You really are. And in this business, which is so relational and so ideally not transactional at all, if you are a master of relationships and communication and just generally uplifting people and genuinely liking people and being genuinely interested in people, like if you've got that or can generate that, which in my opinion, you can, you're going to win. You're going to win in life. You're going to win in your relationships. You're going to win in business. And so, just thinking about like, how can I authentically lift somebody up? Even if it's just like, hey, love your outfit today or love your style. I dig your look, something like that. But, you said something earlier that I think is just pure gold. And I think listeners should write this down. This quote, use this all the time. What do you do for fun? Use that all the time when you're meeting people. Every single time you meet somebody new, ask them what they do for fun. You can't lose with that question because people love talking about what they do for fun, right? Like they love talking about themselves and they love their passions. They love their hobbies and they light up. People light up when you ask them that question. And that's what you want. You want people to respond to you in a way that they feel, you can tell that they feel good.
It's the best icebreaker sort of thing, especially if you're meeting a stranger. Hey, where you from sort of thing. And the next thing is, what do you do for fun?
Yeah.
Go from there. And then, like, just kind of dig into that enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think the ethic around culture and look, I think one thing that needs to be said here is that we haven't even mentioned this, but the fact that you are vertically integrated and have your property management in-house gives you the ability to really control that culture piece. And
needed it. When I met Howard, we were already in the process, my partner and I, of going in-house with property management. Our experience with third-party PMs wasn't very good. And
it's terrible. Yeah. It's
I don't want to say they're all bad. I know there are some good ones. We even have good ones. I'm from New York. I move with a fast pace. I talk fast. I talk with my hands because I'm Italian. No one cares about your baby as much as you do, or I do. Right. So like they weren't filling leases and it was really frustrating. So we were switching over to, buying real page property management software. And we had like 90 units that we were managing. So it was really expensive to do that. And then we met Howard and then Howard explains, the ethic, all the stuff. And then he's like, oh, by the way, like you have to manage this in-house. You have to hire your team. You have to explain this because you need control, because you can't have a third party PM and be like, all right, on our properties, they're called members. They pay membership fees. And then elsewhere they are renters. Like they're going to default back to what they're training, which is a renter, you're a tenant, which isn't bad, but like we're trying to do something different. So absolutely. Yes. We had to bring it in house and it's been a lot of work and you're creating all these processes, but thankfully we inherited a lot of that from Howard, but we still had to build out our own systems and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah. I'm curious, how do the members in this case, how do they respond to this? Like, because they've never heard, you're not just explaining it to your employees, you're explaining it to them, the members themselves. Like, how do they take it? I'm just, because if it were me, I'd be like, this is different. Like, I kind of look a little sideways at it and just wonder like, what's going on here? Like, what's the response like?
Yeah. So, it's unsurprisingly, not everybody picks up on it. They're just like, oh, I'm being called something different. They still call themselves, most people still call themselves a renter. That's fine. I think what we've noticed, one of the other big differentiators is, especially for, workforce housing that we operate in, most people, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, are used to being treated, I'll say poorly, right?
Yeah.
First of the month, the rent is due. By the third or fifth or whatever state you're in, it might be like, okay, you get a notice. And that's expected. And then as a customer, when I have a problem, my toilet's clogged up, my AC doesn't work, I call the office and I say, hey, I need someone to come check it out. Sometimes it's radio silence, it's crickets, right? And then what do? They kind of get trained behaviorally to go into the office and make a big freaking deal, right? They yell, they scream, they get upset, emotional about it. And that's the circle, right? Like when rent's due, I'm expected to pay, but when I have a problem, it's, you don't service me, right? And so then when they come to our communities, we make it a big, big deal for our services team to be like, look, you got to communicate, right? It's number one. This is low hanging fruit. If you can communicate well and set expectations. Hey, I'm busy. I can get to you in an hour or tomorrow or whatever. You are so far above and beyond everybody else that they almost don't know how to react. It's just like, wait, what? What's going on? It's like having when your kids are yelling at you and you jump on the floor and you start having a temper tantrum, like their brain shuts down. So similar thing. And so you can kind of like, you can retrain them that, but a lot of people answer questions. They sort of don't really resonate too much with the member stuff. They kind of go default to their default behavior of like, I'm a renter, I'm in unit, whatever, XYZ. And that's okay too. Like, we don't correct them and say, hey, you're a member. It's sort of, people will just sort of over time, as they stay longer, and that's usually what happens in our properties, they just kind of, that becomes their default. And then if they go somewhere else, then they quickly see, we've had people move back. They quickly see that, oh, I actually had a good thing going on living at our communities there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, on the one hand, it's important how the members feel about the way that you're treating them. And I mean, that's obviously an incredibly important outcome here, but it seems to me like you have control over what you have control over, right? And you, with being vertically integrated, having property management in-house, you have control over that culture piece, and you have control over how your people treat your residents, tenants, members, whatever you want to call them, right? Like you have complete control over that. I mean, effectively as the boss, ideally you have complete control over that, let's say. So that to me is like, that's in and of itself a good enough reason to have this emphasis that you have on culture and on, I mean, to me, the word that it kind of underlies all this is just like decency and respect, right? Like humanity. Like treating people like a fellow human being rather than part of a system or part of, an asset or whatever.
When I usually tell the story, one of the things I do say, and I didn't say it this time, is, really what we do is we treat people with dignity and respect. I mean, I literally say that left it out here, but you hit the nail on the head. That's really what it is. It just boils down to that. Treat everyone like a human being and not like just like this annoyance that I run into very often. And for better or worse, like it helps us, unfortunately, because we stand out in a good way, right? When we operate our properties, it's just, but overall for like humanity, for the industry, it reflects poorly. It's not cool. I don't know why that's acceptable for some places, but.
Yeah. For listeners, real quick, I'll just mention a resource that I can email you if you'd like to reach out to me. We are at Greenlight. We use third-party property management still, right? So we're in a different situation than JP with that. And one of the ways that we work with our property managers is we use an asset management plan, which is an actual printed out brochure almost of exactly how we expect the property to go, to be managed, how we expect the business plan to go, the exact numbers we're trying to hit, the metrics, everything about the property that's important to us that the property manager takes care of in their job of managing the property. And it's occurring to me in this interview, that in this discussion with you, JP, that that's the culture piece is a place that asset management plan is a place where we can really make a difference, I think, with the culture. So anyway, if you guys want a template of an AMP asset management plan, feel free to email me, Tate at glequitygroup.com. Happy to send that to you. So, where are you in terms of doors right now? Door count?
Yeah. 700.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, I mean, you're right at that. I mean, people kind of say that 1,000 door mark is where you want to look at going vertical. You guys went a little bit, a lot bit earlier.
A lot of it early. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the sacrifice in doing that? Is it a financial, monetary hardship to be in-house when you're smaller, or what's that look like?
It's a really good question. I think what we sacrificed early on, and we're making up for it now, we focused on finding really good deals and operating them well. And we didn't focus on the capital raising part and creating a name for ourselves in the marketplace and doing the marketing of our brand, investor nurturing with respect to like creating email lists and automation and all the nurturing stuff. That's something we're working on now. But that was the sacrifice, because there's only so much that we can do. And yes, you hire people when you bring them on, and the other part of creating that is also cash, like reinvesting and investing in the company, and more importantly, hiring people and bringing people on. So it was time and money. And as a consequence, at the time, it was not focusing on building a capital raising business. For better or worse, now we're able to kind of do that, and also maybe point to or leverage our track record or our successes in doing that, and being where we are. But so nothing's perfect, but at the time that was important for us.
And look, I mean, starting and operating a commercial real estate holdings, acquisitions and holdings firm, which is essentially what you created first, is a totally different adventure. And I call it an adventure, but made it purposefully, than starting a capital raising firm. Yes. Those are two totally different activities, and starting both of them at the same time, and like from scratch that's like,
we need another person for that. Like, I did the operations, I did the biz dev part, and then we would have needed a capital raising person. Like, that's the only way you can do that.
Yeah. That's really what and you and I joined our capital raising, to bring this kind of full circle here. We joined our capital raising mastermind called Raise Masters with Hunter Thompson. We'll give him a quick plug here. He's our guy. He's our dude. We're
our guru.
Our guru. We don't have, the podcast doesn't have an official affiliation, but we're members of the mastermind and love it. And, that is, you and I joined essentially about the same time, within a month or so of each other, I think. And really similar path. We're at, I think, about 650 doors right now. And we were good. We came from the single family flipping space, right? So we were good at finding deals, budgeting deals, getting them done, getting them sold, marketing the deals, et cetera. We were very deal specific, deal focused. And in the single family world, there's always ways to figure out the financing. At least for us, we had some credit lines and some stuff that we worked with on our own, but
dollar amount that you could kind of manage. Right. Yeah.
And especially because you're doing it in smaller chunks and it's, over time and that sort of thing. But, you get into the apartment space and even in your first deal or two or three, even you do have a pretty, typically you have a pretty good family friends play to make sometimes and referrals and word of mouth. But eventually that's that's gone, right? Or you've exhausted a lot of it, and you got to have a machine. We call it in my coaching program, we call it a flywheel, which is, your digital presence, ideally a landing page with a nice click magnet that people are going to sign up for your investor club in. And then that goes into your CRM. Your CRM generates auto drip email campaigns to those people and nurtures those relationships. You're trying to get them to set an appointment with you, to get on a call so that you can nurture the relationship more. That's all, man. That is like such different level of activity than going out and finding deals and getting them done, isn't it?
It is. And I spent, you can appreciate this because we were in the same boat, right? Like I felt like I joined in March. I feel like the first 3 or 4 months was absorbing the content, in group here, and then reading a bunch of books. I felt like, I make this joke in the movie The Matrix. After the first one, I think Neo learns Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. I've read so much marketing books. I feel like I know, marketing. I don't know all the marketing, but I know enough where in the beginning, it's overwhelming all the things. Mm-hmm. All the pieces that you pointed out of the flywheel, each one of those is a thing in itself. And there's so much nuance and not even science, just like art form that goes into each one of those things. It's not just like you throw it together. You could, but there's ways of optimizing. And I think for me, my personality, I'm very obsessive with things. So in order for me to feel comfortable with things, I have to like go really deep, which is annoying because everything takes longer than I wanted it to. But yeah, every one of those things is a thing, man. It's something. Yeah,
for sure. JP, what's next for you guys? Where are you headed from here?
Yeah. So working on a book, as a tech sales guy, turned apartment investor, feel like I could tell a pretty good story to my tech sales brothers and sisters on how to save on taxes, from their commission checks, or just make money with paying less than taxes, and putting their money to work so they don't have to be like slaves to the man anymore. Right. That's one thing we're working on, doing this capital raising business unit of our business here. So working on all the things you just mentioned in your flywheel. They're finally coming together. We've rebranded our website and working on putting a lot of content together that I'll be using on social media, Instagram and LinkedIn. And then we're still working on deals. So we're looking at a couple of deals right now in the Ohio area, but we mainly focus on the Southeast. So working on a couple of things and just putting more of Hunter Thompson's plans together so that we could build this well-oiled capital raising machine and really just go out there and build relationships like we're doing now here over the podcast.
That's awesome. Yeah. One last question for you before we do that. What's the best way for listeners to learn more about you, reach out to you, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. You can go to my website. It's jpalbano.com /podcast. And that's where I'll have, things that we'll talk about from the show here and some interesting nuggets for people to sign up for, to learn more about us or to just kind of get our input on multifamily real estate. So that's jpalbano.com. And if you're a fan of, if you're old enough and a fan of Worldwide Wrestling Federation, it's spelled like Captain Lou Albano.
Wow, yeah.
Relation, but if it matters as much, I would say he's my father, but he's not my father. But
that's hilarious, dude. That is a blast from the past. I haven't thought about that. I mean, that's like early 80s, mid 80s. Yeah.
Iron Sheik and Roddy Piper, right?
Yeah, you and I are, of course, the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan, and Mr. T was in there for a little bit. And good times, man. Okay, so you're writing a book, so this shouldn't be a tough one for you. In all the wisdom that you've kind of garnered here, especially recently with the capital raising piece and integrating that, if you could go back to that 2017 JP and give yourself kind of one word of advice about the next, I guess 6-7 years here, what would you say?
It would be, don't be afraid. You said you wanted a word, but it's going to be a sentence.
This is great. Yeah.
Invest in yourself.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will easily spend, me included, on things, right? Like I got into tactical shooting a couple of years ago. So like I spend stupid money on relatively stupid things. But like when it comes time to sign up for some kind of program to learn how to write better LinkedIn posts, like how many thousands of dollars that? And you kind of like, think about it. But like, if it's going to help you in your career and help you grow as a person, or you help your family as a result of that, like, do it, commit to it, do it, spend the money, invest in yourself.
Invest in yourself. Yeah. Perfect. Well said. Dude, this was great. Really, really great. Really appreciate you. And this was awesome to get to spend better part of an hour with you here and kind of have a little jam session, so to speak.
I loved it too.
Yeah. Appreciate it. And look forward to meeting you in person here in hopefully one of the next Raise Masters events or
October, hopefully. Yeah.
Best ever this year. Are you going to come back to that?
Maybe. I'm going to be going to an event in October with Hunter and guys there. So hopefully
that'll be good. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that one or not, but that should be awesome. Yeah. So awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, JP, for sharing all your wisdom and experience and knowledge. Really appreciate it. And listeners, thank you for listening. You guys make all this fun and worth doing and really fulfilling for both JP and myself, I know. So we really appreciate you guys. And we hope that you keep coming back, keep listening and learning and sharpening your saw. And as JP said, investing in yourself. There's lots of ways of doing that, right? Financial is one big important one, but digital mentorship. This what you're doing right now is another way of doing it. So good job, guys. Keep it up, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
This has been the Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of the Apartment Gurus.